Hi man, I'm Officer Liddell. Uh,
Put it in park! Put it in park! Hey! Put the car in park, brother. Hey, can you unlock the door for me, please? Just unlock the door, okay? Put the car in park.
This is Charlie
Just
246.
unlock the door. Okay.
Can I get Adam
Hey!
253?
Are you okay?
Is he on duty?
I just been working all day. I got something wrong with my mouth, and I'm on my way to the
Is
hospital.
that for 253?
I just got.
Yeah, can you
I just
call
got
me?
two
Best friend?
fools, like,
911 emergency.
Hi, this call is for Sheriff in Alpine. I'm at my neighbor's house and I knocked on the door and the door started to open. There's no answer and there are cars in the driveway.
Okay, what was the address?
It's 1753 Kirsten, Kyrsten, Terrace Court.
Okay, give me one, and it was 1753?
1753 Kirsten Terrace Court. It should.
Not every call that police answer begins with crime, sirens, or pursuit. Some begin with worry, a neighbor's uneasy silence, a family's unanswered call, a counselor's concerned voice on the phone. Some calls begin with a question, is everything okay? And yet, in the crucible of those moments, something profound and irreversible can happen. Something that transforms care into confrontation. Something that turns vulnerability into threat. Something that changes what it means to respond with authority rather than with assistance. Imagine standing on the threshold of a doorway, expecting mercy and finding caution. Imagine sitting in your vehicle because you feel unwell, only to see uniforms approach with urgency. Imagine holding an object in a dimly lit room, unaware that perception might outweigh context. In each of these situations, the intentions behind a call for help should matter. But what happens when they do not? What happens when the systems designed to protect us interpret uncertainty as danger? What happens when, in the blink of an eye, a welfare check stops being about welfare? This documentary examines those pivotal seconds, the moments when vulnerability is reframed, when the trajectory of a crisis response accelerates into confrontation, and when the presence of police body cameras reveals not just what happened, but how quickly intentions shift, interpretations harden, and outcomes turn deadly or near deadly. Throughout this narration, you will see how calls for help can be caught in a structural dilemma. Officers trained for threat response meet individuals in crisis whose reactions do not align with inflexible expectations of compliance. These stories are not isolated. They reveal a pattern, a structural tension between care and control. Stay with this documentary to the end, not merely to witness these encounters, but to understand them in context, and to ask yourself, if vulnerability can be misread as threat, then what does that say about the way we respond to people in crisis? Because these are not just stories. They are moments captured on camera, frozen in time, revealing how the twin forces of perception and policy can override purpose. And once that override happens, welfare becomes something else entirely. Case 1. Sidney Wilson. The call to the Fairfax County Police Department on that late September afternoon was unremarkable in its intent. A mental health counselor had reached out, concerned about 33-year-old Sidney Wilson, reporting that she was in an agitated state in her apartment. No crime, no violence reported, not even a suspicion of harm to others. This was a welfare check, a request to verify her well-being and, if necessary, to assist her in a moment of distress. When the responding officer arrived, he knocked on the door repeatedly. The body-worn camera captures the quiet rhythm of a routine encounter. A knock, a pause, another knock. Then, the door opens. Sidney stands in the threshold, holding a kitchen knife. What happened next unfolds in a matter of seconds, but those seconds contain the structural fracture at the heart of this documentary's theme.
how are you? Oh, Jesus Christ. Back up! No! Back up!
The officer attempts to retreat, not to flee, but to create space. His voice is calm, but firm. Back up, he commands. Sidney does not. Instead, she steps forward. With every inch she advances, the interaction shifts. The welfare check, a call for well-being, becomes an escalation. Commands replace concern. Distance collapses. Perception hardens.
Back up!
The officer fires his weapon multiple times. Sidney is hit. She is later pronounced dead at a local hospital. The officer sustains non-life-threatening injuries. Pause for a moment. Reflect on the shift. The call began with an expectation of care. An anxious professional sought assistance for someone struggling. But in the space of a few breaths, that intention was reframed. Not because Sidney was violent in the criminal sense, but because her movement did not match the officer's criteria for safety and control. A kitchen knife became a symbol not of her distress, but of danger. Body-worn cameras record movements, but they also reveal interpretations. The footage does not capture thought, but it captures reaction. A figure advancing, a retreating step, a command cut short by a fatal decision. The doorway, in this case, becomes more than a physical boundary. It becomes a threshold between possibility and consequence, between care and enforcement. What is remarkable about this case is not only the tragic outcome, but the absence of clear malicious intent. Sidney was not attempting to harm others. Her crisis was internal, personal. Yet the structural expectation of compliance, drop the object, retreat upon command, obey without hesitation, became the measure by which her behavior was judged. And when her actions deviated from that measure, the interaction lost its original purpose. At this threshold, the welfare check stops being about welfare. It becomes about control. And once control becomes the priority, vulnerability is no longer treated as a condition needing care. It becomes interpreted as unpredictability, something to manage, to contain, to neutralize. The body camera does not lie. It shows movement, but it also shows context slipping away. In the seconds between Sidney opening that door and the shots being fired, we witnessed the transformation of an encounter from one of care to one of conflict. Not because Sidney wanted confrontation, but because the structure of the interaction could not accommodate her distress. And when that structure fails, the consequence is fatal. Case 2, Terrence Shane. In a CVS parking lot in Indianapolis, officers received a report of a man unresponsive in his vehicle. This was another welfare check, a request to ensure that someone inside a closed vehicle was not in medical distress. These calls are common. They often end with an ambulance or with the person stating they are fine and driving away. But this one did not end simply.
We're on a check welfare 16th and Meridian. On a check welfare, guys passed out in the car. Put it in park! Put it in park!
Hold on.
Hey! Put the car in park, brother. Hey!
Thanks, sir.
Can you unlock the door for me, please? Just unlock the door, okay?
246.
Put the car in park.
This is Charlie
Just unlock the
246.
door.
Can I get Adam
Hey!
253?
Are you okay?
Is he on duty?
I just been working all day. Time I got something wrong with my mouth, and I'm on my way to the hospital.
Go ahead, step out. It's in park. Come on back here.
I see all in the truck.
Well,
What talking about you?
so I was on my siren and my horn. We were knocking on the window, and you weren't moving. So step back here and we'll explain everything.
When officers approached the vehicle, Terrence Shane was awake and cooperative. He responded verbally. He spoke to them. But then, for reasons that remain part of the encounter's complexity, he got back into the car. Witnesses could see the tension rising, a shift in body language, a vehicle now becoming an unexpected variable in the interaction. An officer attempted to stop him from driving. The car shifted into reverse. In that instant, the situation changed. The officer became pinned between the vehicle and a wall. Another officer fired a shot, hitting Terrence in the arm. He survived, but this near-fatal outcome reveals the same structural fracture we see in the other cases. Consider the transition. In the span of a heartbeat, a car door that once offered a seat to relieve discomfort turned into an instrument of ambiguity. When Terrence's vehicle moved, officers perceived a threat. The potential for harm transformed the encounter. Compliance became the metric for safety, but compliance, in this case, was ambiguous. Was Terrence attempting to flee? Was he confused? Was he overwhelmed? The body-worn camera shows officers shouting commands, but it also shows a man caught in a moment where his intentions cannot be disentangled from perception. Here again, the welfare check stops being about welfare at the moment the vehicle moved. Suddenly, the occupants of the scene are not evaluating distress anymore. They are interpreting danger. And in the high-stakes calculus of perceived threat, the measured response became a bullet that struck Terrence's arm. This case exposes a structural theme. Officers are trained to respond quickly to threats to physical safety. Yet welfare checks are intrinsically ambiguous. They require interpretation, communication, and patience. In this case, the moment the vehicle moved was the pivot. It collapsed the space for care and expanded the space for force. Case 3. Robert Liddell.
In Alpine. I'm at my neighbor's house and I knocked on the door and the door started to open. There's no answer and there are cars in the driveway.
Okay, what was the address?
It's 1753 Kirsten, Kyrsten, Terrace Court.
Okay, give me one.
In a quiet neighborhood of Alpine, California, November 5, 2025, a neighbor called authorities with a simple concern. A door was left open, and a longtime resident, Robert Edmund Liddell, had not been seen. Once more, this was a welfare check, a request for verification of well-being.
Hello, Sheriff's Office, anybody here? Hello? Sheriff's Office, anybody here?
Deputies entered the dimly lit house with flashlights, announcing themselves. Body cameras were recording as they made their way through the narrow hallways. Then, they encountered a figure holding what appeared to be a firearm.
Sheriff's Office, anybody in here?
Check the rooms and see.
Hello, Sheriff's Office.
Hello, Sheriff's Office.
Oh,
Hey!
sir, drop the weapon.
Hey, drop it! Hey, we're the Sheriff's Department!
Sheriff's Department.
Hey, your neighbor called. Sir, your neighbor called! Sir!
The deputies commanded him to drop the object. A deputy fired. Robert Liddell later died at a hospital. The object he was holding was a replica firearm. This encounter hinges on perception. In darkness, with limited visibility, and with the silhouette of what looks like a gun, the deputies perceived an imminent threat. Their training compels them to respond to what appears to be a lethal weapon with lethal force. There was no time to verify context. There was no clear opportunity to slow the encounter. In those fractions of seconds, the welfare check was no longer about verifying well-being. It was about surviving what appeared to be a threat. At each stage, entering the home, identifying the object, issuing commands, the interaction shifted from an inquiry into a crisis response. The welfare check stopped being about welfare not because of what Robert intended, but because of what the deputies perceived in that low-light moment. In this structure, uncertainty becomes danger. Ambiguity becomes justification for force. And the original reason for the call, concern for Robert's health and safety, becomes irrelevant in the face of perceived threat. This case underscores a hard truth. The environment in which a welfare check occurs matters. Darkness, spatial constraints, and perceived objects shape interpretation. And when interpretation tilts toward danger, welfare is no longer the framework that guides response. It is contextually erased. Robert's death reveals how quickly the purpose of a welfare check can be superseded by a narrative of self-defense. When vision is unclear and perception fills the gaps, force becomes the default means of resolution. This structural reality is not unique to this case. It is part of a pattern where vulnerability, misread, or misunderstood is punished with consequence. 3 different states, 3 different environments, 3 different individuals. 2 died. 1 survived. What unites them is not location, age, or circumstance, but a structural pattern. Each encounter began with care, concern, and uncertainty. Each shifted at a precise moment. A door opens with a knife. A vehicle moves in reverse. A figure stands in darkness holding a gun-shaped object. In each case, the welfare check stops being about welfare the moment perception overrides purpose. Not because danger was absent, not because force was unwarranted in every sense, but because the structures governing these encounters are designed for threat response, not crisis interpretation. Welfare checks depend on compliance, clarity, and communication. Yet crisis, by definition, resists compliance, clarity, and rapid communication. When officers default to threat interpretation, the welfare check collapses into confrontation. If this analysis has helped you see how quickly care can become conflict, not merely through action, but through perception, then share it. Because these conversations do not merely inform, they shape expectations, and expectations can eventually shape reform. Understanding the structure of these encounters is not about negating the challenge of policing. It is about seeing how systems respond to vulnerability, and whether those responses reflect care or control. The difference often lies in seconds, and understanding those seconds may be the first step toward changing them.